Hello, good evening. Welcome back. I was just live a little bit ago, but it was so good and so short. I'm going to get into this next little short one. And oh yeah, the book we're reading, The Music Lesson, A Spiritual Search for Growth Through Music by Victor L. Wooten. And we're getting into measure 8, tone. Doctors use lasers to operate. Music in the right hands can do the same thing. Dang. Hey, Genevieve, and hey, AF. Welcome, y'alls. It's so good. So, we're going to read this tiny little chapter too, probably just another half an hour. It was later that day, after Sam had left, that I was driving downtown. I hadn't seen Michael all day and was hesitant to leave my house for fear of missing him. I had a few questions about Sam I wanted to clear up. He told me that he had learned from Michael from about 12 years earlier. Since he was only 11, that statement raised a few questions in my mind. I was driving through a pretty rundown part of town when I saw someone who resembled Michael. I drove around the block to get another look, and sure enough, it was him. He was sitting in the grass talking to a homeless man. Michael's clothes were more tattered and worn than I'd ever seen him. He looked like a homeless man himself. I wasn't sure he wanted me to see him that way, but just as I decided to drive on by, he stood up and flagged me down. I parked the car, locked the door, and walked over to him. "It took you long enough. I thought you was never gonna show up," Michael said. "You thought what?" I asked. I never knew if he was serious when he said stuff like that, or if he was just improvising. I decided that it didn't matter. Also, his new dialect was confusing me. "Dis is Uncle Clyde," he said. "He's originally from New Orleans, but he lives over there, under the bridge now. We sits here ever so often just talking 'bout dis and dat. Right now, we's trying to figure out if in life is alive or not. I says that it is, and so do Clyde. We just trying to figure out a way that anyone can say that it's not." Uncle Clyde was an older man. He seemed much older than Michael. But since I didn't know Michael's age, Clyde's age remained a mystery too. His skin was dark, as was his short, scruffy hair. His graying mustache and full beard hid both his top and bottom lips, but didn't totally obscure his peaceful smile. Although he appeared elderly, his skin was smooth and his teeth were straight and white. His demeanor was not like that of most homeless people. He seemed happy and cheerful, as if he was exactly where he wanted to be. And unlike other homeless people I'd seen in the area, he carried nothing with him. He had no bag or cart heaped with his possessions. His clothes, though tattered, were not dirty, just very worn, as if he wanted them that way. "You must be that musician Michael was telling me about," Uncle Clyde said. "He say that you's real good, but that you don't know it yet. Come here and let me have a look at you." I glanced at Michael. "Goes on, son. It's all right," Michael added, gesturing towards Uncle Clyde. I could understand Clyde talking this way, but it was awkward hearing Michael speak in such a manner. If I'd heard that voice over the phone, I wouldn't have believed it was him. I walked over to where Uncle Clyde was sitting. He slowly rose to his feet, as if every bone in his body ached, and proceeded to look me over. The way he moved made me think that I should be examining him instead. He started by looking closely at individual strands of my hair. He even pulled out a strand, which hurt, by the way, and showed it to Michael. They talked about it for a moment, but I couldn't hear what they said. Antenna. He then worked his way down my body, examining everything from my eyes down to my feet. I even had to remove my shoes for him. "Wear clean socks and underwear, son. You never know when a homeless man is going to give you a physical," I could hear my mom saying. I looked at Michael during the long process. He assured me with his looks that I should let Clyde continue. When he was done, Uncle Clyde looked at Michael and said, I thinks that if the word life means put that something is alive, then that must mean that life is alive. I thinks that if the word life means that something is alive, then that must mean that life is alive." Okay, I understood that time. Makes complete sense to me, Michael replied. Wait a minute, I interrupted impatiently. Aren't you going to tell me what you found out? About what? They asked in unison. About me. You just look over my whole body from head to toe. Aren't you going to tell me anything about it? Michael looked at Uncle Clyde, and I did the same. Well, sir, I don't rightly care about your body too much, Clyde said as he lowered himself back to the ground. I was just looking at it to see about you. I just wanted to see if in you is what Michael says you is. You know how he can stretch the truth sometimes. I knew what he was talking about, but it wasn't the time to discuss Michael's truth stretching. I was more curious about other things. What did my body tell you about me? I asked. Well, sir, if you really want to know, I guess it's all right to tell you a thing or two. You think so, Michael? He glanced at Michael for his approval. Michael nodded in affirmation. Your body, said Clyde, resonates with a certain vibration. This vibration puts out a certain tone that I can read, depending on what your soul is up to, that is. Sort of like how an engineer can read the tones in music. You see, your soul has an agenda for you. Now, even you don't know what that agenda is. I can see that. But you and your soul is just about to catch up with each other. It's always exciting when that happens in a person's life. For some people, it happens before they gets here. That ain't no fun at all. This is where the fun is at. I want to see you again in a few years. He turned to look at Michael. I know that's right, Michael commented. They shared a laugh. You know about music too, Uncle Clyde? You know about music too, Uncle Clyde? I asked. I didn't know why I was asking about music when he was telling me such interesting things about myself. Oh, yeah, son, I plays music. And one day, when you realize how to stop just playing your bass, you's gonna stop playing music too. Stop playing my bass? That was the second time that day someone had talked about that. What did it mean? I was just about to ask when Michael butted in. Uncle Clyde is the best harmonica player on the planet, in my opinion, he said. Yes, I is, but we ain't here to talk about me, is we? Clyde answered. But just to let yous in on a little secret, I know a little bit about everything. So do you. That's what you's about to find out. That's what I'm about to. I mean, that's what I'm about to find out? What does that mean? I asked. It don't mean nothing to you yet, he answered. In due time, son, in due time. You just stick with what this here Michael character. You just stick with this here Michael character. You be all right, all right. But if and he start to treat you bad, mess with your mind too much, you just come see your old Uncle Clyde. I'll be right here underneath the bridge. He glanced at Michael, and they both started laughing again. Yeah. Just then we heard a loud screech. We turned to look and saw a car desperately trying to skid out of the way of a pedestrian crossing the intersection. The car struck the man, knocking him into the air and across the street. It was painful to watch. He landed on the curb, apparently unconscious. It happened so quickly and slowly at the same time, it didn't seem real. Michael, Clyde, and I ran to the scene. It was later that I remembered seeing slow motion Clyde running gracefully to the man's aid. I'd thought Clyde was nearly crippled. Michael later told me that Clyde chooses to live and act that way, and act the way he does, because that way people generally leave him alone. He also told me that Clyde always says, even the government will let an old crippled homeless man be. I've never thought about a person choosing to live that way. I tried to understand Clyde's position, but the comforts I was used to didn't allow it. By the time we got to the injured man, he was lying on the ground with his eyes closed. He appeared to be bleeding badly from the right side of his head. The driver of the car was unhurt. He ran over to assist, but didn't know what to do. Michael and Clyde stood there for a few seconds, looking at the injured man. By that time, more and more people had gathered around, but no one knew what to do. Michael knelt down and placed the injured man's head in his lap. Clyde knelt down across from him. Don't touch him, you guys, I thought. I couldn't tell if the man was breathing or not, but Michael didn't seem to care. He began to sing a soft melody as he gently stroked the man's forehead. Uncle Clyde was sitting there, slightly bobbing his head up and down, not nodding to the beat of Michael's tune, just off in his own world. The onlookers, well, they just looked on. They didn't seem bothered by the sight of two homeless men caressing and singing to an injured man. Or maybe they were like me, frozen with disbelief. Every once in a while, Uncle Clyde would wave his hand over the man's chest as if he was petting the air. It was a gentle motion that almost went unnoticed. Michael kept singing lightly, all the time with a gentle smile on his face. After a few precious minutes, Michael and Clyde looked at each other. They looked as if they had a plan, but I couldn't tell what their intentions were. The rest of the crowd and I remained silent. Michael kept his right hand on the injured man's forehead while Clyde placed his right hand on the man's chest. They held hands with their left hands. Michael stopped singing for a moment, and then the man's body twitched. His body jumped, to be more specific. We heard a loud siren. Michael placed the man's head on the ground. As everyone turned to look at the arriving ambulance, Michael and Clyde stood up and casually made their way through the crowd. Without looking at each other, they walked off in separate directions as if their exit was planned. As Michael walked past, he motioned for me to follow. He didn't look at me either. I glanced back at the injured man and noticed that he was now sitting up, wiping his eyes. I realized there was no blood coming from his head. I was shocked and confused. Questions immediately formed in my mind. When I turned to ask Michael about it, he was gone. When I arrived at my car, I found Michael sitting inside. There he told me that the injured man would be all right. I asked him if we needed to pick up Uncle Clyde. He told me that Clyde would be all right too. We could hear the ambulance driving away as I started the car. I was curious about what had happened, but waited until we were on the road and the situation was over before I asked any more questions. Dude! What happened, Michael? I know that you did something. What did you just do? I helped his body reorganize, he answered, healing his head against the window leaning his head. I'll start again. I helped his body reorganize, he answered, leaning his head against the window and closing his eyes. It was the first time I'd ever seen him appear tired. What do you mean reorganize? I asked. His body had gone through a tremendous trauma and became disorganized. You see, each part of a person's body can act like an individual entity. Usually they work together, but when something like that happens, all the parts can take off running in different directions. Clyde and I helped bring them back together. That is the best way I can explain it. And you did it by singing? Partially. What else did you do? I asked. Michael sat up and spoke. Well, have you ever been to a science museum and seen the exhibit that uses sand placed on top of a thin, flat metal plate? You take a violin bow and... I butted in. And as you bow the side of the metal plate, the sand forms different geometric shapes depending on the pitch that's being produced. Ha 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 ha! Yes, Michael responded. The sand responds to the different pitches as clay responds to a potter's hands. But with the body, it is not just the pitch that is important. It is also the tone of the sound that helps produce the desired effect. Can you explain what you mean by tone? Tone can mean a lot of things. It can pertain to your voice or to color or to the condition of your muscles. There is a tone control on your television set, as well as one on your bass guitar. Photographers and painters as well as athletes talk about tone. But since we have agreed to talk about music, I will explain it this way. He adjusted himself in his seat and continued. Suppose we go dancing at a nightclub. We walk in and the DJ is playing music loudly. The sound system sounds great, the dance floor is packed, and the girls are pretty. What would you do? I would find a pretty girl and ask her to dance. I liked the thought of that. What would happen if, all of a sudden, the subwoofers blew out and there were no more lows coming out of the speakers? Imagine the sound. What do you think would happen next? The dance floor would clear, I answered, revising my earlier mental picture. Or revisiting my earlier mental picture. Precisely. Why? He asked. The subwoofers create a low bass frequency, I responded. They shake the whole room. Yes, and they actually shake your whole body, he added. With a powerful system, you can feel the bass vibrating right through you. When your body starts shaking, it's like you're already dancing just from the sound of the speakers. I get it. And if the subs go out, I lose the feeling and don't feel like dancing anymore, I added. Even if the girls are pretty? He asked, smiling at me. Right, I chuckled. Very good, he said, resting his head against the window again. You see, tone is a powerful thing. Even though the same music would be coming out of the speakers, the change in tone would cause everyone in the club to feel differently and therefore act differently. So with this in mind, you should understand that the notes you produce on your bass guitar will have different effects on your listeners depending on the tone that you use. Sometimes tone is the deciding factor that causes a person to listen to you or not. I never thought about tone in that way before, I stated. If you want your audience to dance, you should use a certain tone. If you want them to quiet down and listen, another tone may be necessary. If you want them to be healed, an altogether different tone may do the trick. All I did with the man in the street was use tone and pitch to convince his energy to recognize or to reorganize in a way that would cause his body to heal. Oh my goodness. Hi, Dino Orbit. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Croatia. Cool. Welcome from Ohio. Awesome. Dude. My heart's beating very quickly. I love it. And I just got really hot. Okay. That's so exciting. One time when I was seeing Nicole, that awesome sound healer who recommended this book to me, she talked about this specific healing note and how she's looked for it all over the interwebs and hasn't come across it and stuff, but maybe we need to look inside or have a Michael. Thank you. Thank you so much, AF. I wanted to understand all of it. What do you mean by the word convince? I asked. When you are healing someone or something, the choice to become healed or not is completely yours. Don't ever think that it is. Oh, wait, whoa. When you are healing someone or something, the choice to become healed or not is completely yours. Don't ever think that it is. You are only in charge of what you are doing. The energy you are trying to heal must agree with what you desire. And on some level, the person or thing being healed must also agree. There are many agreements that must first be made. That is why all attempts to heal do not happen the way one wishes them to. That information was strange to me. I understood what he was saying, but I had no idea if it was true. All I had to go on was what I'd witnessed. Michael had a way of making anything understandable, even if he didn't completely understand it the first time around. I knew he would say it again in another way. I sat back and waited. The same is true when playing music, he continued. Have you ever realized that on some days you seem to have it, and on other days, under the same circumstances, playing the same songs, you can't seem to find it? Do you think that it's all up to you, or does music have a say in the matter? Most of us think that it's only up to us. That would be a mistake. Wow. Hi, I was thinking of you today. I was sending you so many good vibrations. Welcome in. And Emoji King. Awesome. Hmm. My heart is beating so fast. Okay. The thought of music having a say was too much for me to grasp at that moment. He spoke about music as if it were real. That made me wonder. Not knowing what to think, I decided to ask another question. I noticed that his head had stopped bleeding when you left. Did you do that? And if so, how did you heal him so fast? He gave me a typical Michael answer. Fast? What is fast except a reflection of your personal perspective of time? Oh. And what is time except a misrepresentation of now? I tell you this, all healing is instant. You are either sick or you are well. There is no in between. So the only thing standing in the way of being instantly healed is time. Wow, I guess you're right, I said, though I knew I would have to spend more time contemplating that statement. Time. I want to understand, I really do. Can you put it in terms that I might be able to understand right now? Understand this, Michael instructed. Time and space are the only things that separate one thing from another. Take time and space out of the equation, and what is left? Oneness. That's it. But even though one could say that time and space are illusions, they are important. They serve a purpose. Without them, we would be unable to observe and experience individuality. The game would be over. Yeah, roar! Do you mean the game of life? I asked. Yes, life as we know it, anyways. Anyway, you see, when you dream, you are allowed to play by different rules. Dreams allow the subconscious to play itself out instantly. Wherever you want to be, there you are. Whatever you want, or don't think you want, there it is, all created by you. Now, real life, as most people call it, can be looked at as a long form imagination, a place where things take time. The addition of time and space slows down our reality, and believe me, that is a blessing. In other words, time and space allow us to stop and smell the roses, or get pricked by its thorns. Learn to manipulate these elements, and you play a different game altogether. The choice, even if made unconsciously, is always yours. Unbelievable, I replied. And music? How does that fit into this scenario? The same is true of music, he continued. There is really only one note. Space and time allow you to experience the different characteristics of that note, making it appear as many different notes. Understanding that will help you make any note fit in at any time. How you see it is always up to you. Think about it. Music and life would be much different without time and space. Okay, I think I'm even more confused now, I told him. Look at it this way, he said. If a person has a cold and breathes on you, are you in danger of catching his cold? Of course, I replied. Well then, doesn't it make sense that it should also work the other way around? If I am more healthy than you are, if I am more healthy than you are sick, shouldn't my healthiness rub off on you? Shouldn't I be able to help make you well? Now that makes sense to me, I guess, I answered, although I've never heard anyone talk about it before. So that's what you did to the man? You imposed your healthiness on him? Yes, in a sense, Michael answered. And now you understand how staying healthy can benefit more than just you alone. Because I am healthy, I had a model which I could impose on him. That is one way to help others find health. Think about the word healthy. It's made up of two words, heal thy. So you can choose to heal thyself or heal thy brother. The choice is yours. Oh my gosh. Ah! Oh, this page resonates to 11 BT dubs 173. I never broke down healthy like that before. Yes. Intention, choice, infectious. Dang. Like playing an instrument. There are many techniques that can be used. I used tones, healing tones. When we reached that man, Clyde and I listened to see how his body resonated. Only then could we choose which healing tones to produce. Then, like the violin bow at the science exhibit, I used the vibrations of my voice to alter the tones of his body. I needed to reorganize them into a more harmonious state. I didn't need to sing loudly because the vibrations were traveling through my hand and into his head. That produced a direct connection, but the tones have to be accurate in order to produce the desired effect. I'm trying to understand, Michael. I really am. What was Clyde doing? Clyde was helping to push and sort. Clyde was helping to push and sort of herd the body's vibrations. HERD. Clyde was helping to push and sort of herd the body's vibrations in the right direction. Got it. Push and sort of herd the body's vibrations in the right direction. Remember when I said that all of the parts of his body were running in different directions? Well, his energies were scattered. Clyde helped to realign them. Once they had decided to regroup, we held hands, said a quick thank you, and we're on our way. Dang, dude. I saw his body jump, I stated. The soul will sometimes separate itself from the body in these types of situations to shield the person from extreme pain. Upon re-entering, the body will often jump. That's all. That's all? As strange as that experience was, there was a quality to it that seemed to make sense. This is crazy stuff, but for some reason it all sounds very natural. You guys are way beyond me. Now you're going to tell me I can do something like that with my bass, right? I don't think I have to tell you. You already know. Music, like everything else, is vibrations. Doctors use lasers to operate. What are lasers but vibrations? Music, in the right hands, can do the same thing. Remember this: the right notes cannot do it alone. The correct tone, as well as dynamics and emotion, must be used. Actually, all the elements of music must be present. These elements are the same as the elements of life. The elements of music, the elements of life. I could say the same words, but somehow I knew they didn't have the same meaning. He said they were the same elements. Sometimes I felt as if I was able to keep up, but other times I felt utterly confused. This was one of the confusing times. My desire to understand all of it at once caused me to become frustrated. I wanted more answers, even though I wasn't sure what the questions were. Michael responded to my confusion with some soothing words. You say that you saw us heal an injured man on the street. If you take Clyde, the injured man, and me, and remove the elements of time and space, how many people would be there? 1, I answered. Remove time and space and tell me how many people were at the scene. 1, I answered again. How many people are in the world? 1. How many in the galaxy? Again, I had to answer 1. And is this one person sick or well? Well, I hope, I answered. Then make it so. With that comment, he turned and looked out the window. I offered no response. Oh my goodness. I feel so thankful right now. While driving, I reflected on the many new ideas Michael had introduced me to in the short time since I'd met him. Many things I'd witnessed him do were impossible, or so I'd thought. I longed to learn how to do every one of them, and he was the perfect one to teach me, or so I thought. Somehow, he seemed to hold the key to unlock hidden parts of my brain, parts that never before existed, or so I thought. I developed a new sense of respect for him that day. Observing how he and Clyde cared for that injured man allowed me to see another side of him. I knew that Michael was crazy and often acted that way, but watching him pull it all together in a crisis like that was incredible. He conducted himself in a serious and direct manner, not with the questionable and quirky behavior that I was used to. I remember once hearing him complain about a theory being taught by a highly reputable physics professor at a prestigious university. Or prestigious? Prestigious? Michael was outraged, claiming that the professor's teachings were based on theory instead of experience or direct knowledge, and therefore should not be taught as truth. Realizing that the professor in question was teaching at a university half a country away, I asked Michael how he knew that was on his curriculum. I told you, knowledge is in the air, he answered. I just need to get that professor to realize it. Not totally believing in his sincerity, I asked him to call the professor if he had a problem with him. Good idea, he responded. Without hesitation, he picked up the phone and dialed. I wondered how he knew the number and whether or not he would repay me for the long distance call. But what perplexed me most was hearing him talk to the physics professor. Michael spoke in a tone I'd never heard him use. He used words that were bigger than my apartment. I didn't believe he was actually speaking to anyone until, as if reading my thoughts, he asked me to silently listen in. Picking up the other phone, I eavesdropped while he gave the physics professor a physics lesson. I was dumbfounded. I had no idea Michael knew anything about the subject. I couldn't understand a thing he was saying, but the professor seemed to follow along easily, although hesitantly. I almost laughed out loud when the professor asked Michael how he knew so much about matter. Michael responded that it didn't matter. It was what he knew that was important. He told the professor to allow matter to teach him about physics rather than allowing physics to teach him about He told the professor to allow matter to teach him about physics rather than allowing physics to teach him about matter. Then, after showing his students how to do the same, they could have group discussions based on observation, not one-sided lectures based on theory. The conversation ended with the professor apologizing to Michael and promising to modify his lectures and his teaching methods. Dang! Hey, welcome back that way. Awesome. Remembering how Michael spoke so fluidly about physics with the professor while also being able to seamlessly blend with a homeless man on the street made me wonder about him and his mysterious knowledge. It was remarkable that he could be equally comfortable dealing with people as diverse as a physics professor, a homeless man, and a wannabe bass player. He'd also just healed an injured man in the middle of a crowd of onlookers by singing to him. I didn't know what to think. Hearing him speak about tone raised more new questions in my mind. From what I'd heard him say, I could alter somebody's body, mind, or attitude just by altering the tone. Was it really possible? I thought about how I felt when listening to some of my favorite musicians. I loved their tones, even though each one was different, and I realized that my mood often changed whenever I heard them play. Was it their tone that affected me? I was starting to see tone in a much broader way, and I finally understood how it is used to fill up a dance floor. But how could I use it to do other things, more positive things, more mysterious things? That I would have to explore. Michael hadn't specified where he wanted to go, so I drove him to my house. I decided to wait until we were inside before I bombarded him with more questions. Upon our arrival, I found a surprise waiting for me. That's the end of the chapter. Cliffhanger! Oh my goodness. It's so good. I'm so thankful. I'm going to call it again. Even though it's so good. It's cuz every chapter is that good. But tomorrow I'm going to read the next chapter, which isn't that long. Tomorrow I'm just going to read another little bit. It's going to be even tinier, but I'm gonna bust out the Secret Teachings of All Ages again tomorrow, and we're gonna do that. That'll be much longer. There's something I'm gonna see if I can't look it up right here, right now. Pythagoras, he had this like tetra harp. I can't remember what it's called right now, but it supposedly healed people. Ooh, I just got a book. Let me see if I haven't even dug in. Well, today I started reading another book, which is so freaking good. It's called The Science of Enlightenment: How Meditation Works by Shinzen Young. Whoa! It's so good. I'm only in chapter 1 and it's just amazing. But The Manual of Harmonics by Nicomachus the Pythagorean. Translation and commentary by Flora R. Levin. Dude. In ancient Greek thought, the musical scale discovered by the philosopher Pythagoras was seen as a utopian model of the harmonic order behind the structure of the cosmos and human existence. Through proportion and harmony, the musical scale bridges the gap between two extremes. It encapsulates the most fundamental pattern of harmonic symmetry and demonstrates how the phenomena of nature are inseparably related to one another through the principle of reciprocity. Because of these relationships embodied in the structure, the music scale was seen as an ideal metaphor of human society by Plato and other Pythagorean thinkers, for it is based on the cosmic principles of harmony, reciprocity, and proportion, whereby each part of the whole receives its just and proper share. This book is the first ever complete translation of the Manual of Harmonics by the Pythagorean philosopher Nicomachus of Gerasa, maybe? 2nd century CE. Published with a comprehensive chapter by chapter commentary, it is a concise and well organized introduction to the study of harmonics, the universal principles of relation embodied in the musical scale. Also included is a remarkable chapter by chapter commentary by the translator, Flora Levin, which makes this work easily accessible to the reader today. Dr. Levin explains the principles of Pythagorean harmony, provides extensive background information, and helps to situate Nicomachus's thought in the history of ideas. This important work constitutes a valuable resource for all students of ancient philosophy, Western cosmology, and the history of music. Ooh. Okay, right. Pythagoras's tetra. I every time I try to remember what I always say tetragrammaton, but that's not what it's called. But let's pull it up and I'll show you a picture of it. Pythagoras, tetra. No. Tetractus. Is that what it is? No, wait. Try. No, it's a 3-sided. It's like a try music. I'm just gonna say try music. Nothing's pulling up from that. It's like a 3-sided harp, and supposedly he could play it for you and heal you, right? 3-sided harp. The Pythagorean harp is capable of activating all of the Pythagorean rainbow modes, utilizing exponents of the number 3 yang as it resonates proportionally. There's a name for this thing, though. Pythagorean canon? No. Is it a canon? I don't remember that being what it was called. When I was studying alchemy, I mean, I still study alchemy, but the 3 laws of resonance, Pythagorean triangle. This so-called Pythagorean triangle was in fact utilized by the Babylonians since at least 1,000 years before Pythagoras' lifetime. Lost Discoveries, the Ancient Roots of Modern Science, from the Babylonians to the Maya, page 7 by Dick Terrace. But there's people that have made attempts of. I wanted to find a picture of it. There's a guy who they made one. Lambdoma keyboard? No. Pythagoras and the origin of music theory. Triangular harps. Let's try that. This thing is so cool looking. Well, it was balls, dude. Google, you're letting me down. If I could remember what it was actually called, I'm sure I could pull it up. Medieval Welsh harp? No. What's this? Trigonometry 3D? No. Three-sided harp. Dude, this is all geometry. This is not the harp. Dang, I really wanted to show you a picture. Anyways, just talked on and on, but that's that. Hey, did you find it? YouTube. So anyways, thanks for hanging out with me again. I'm calling it for the night. Wow. Amazing read. Thank you again, Victor. And all of that. We are one. I love yous. And I will see you tomorrow. I'm aiming for 2 streams tomorrow. One more little chapter. This next one's tiny. And then some Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. So until next time, take care of yourselves and do it like you feel it. I totally appreciate you. Thank you so much. Mwah. Laters.